Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We are living through an absolutely massive foundational shift right now in how we access and how we monetize knowledge. I mean, it's a shift that's rippling across literally everything. We're talking from the open web you and I use every single day, all the way down to the highly locked down confidential data centers of global law firms. And right at the center of all this, there's this massive friction point. It's the inevitable collision of legacy human scale systems with the relentless compounding power of AI.
What's truly wild here is the sheer mind-boggling scale of the disruption happening right in front of our eyes. Think about it. A $300 billion global web search economy is actively being redistributed by AI as we speak. $300 billion. The bottom line is that the companies putting their chips on AI visibility today, they're the ones perfectly positioned to capture a disproportionate slice of this immense pie. Why? Because the fundamental way we look for things, the user journey itself, is totally changing. People are increasingly kicking off their queries in an AI chat window instead of a traditional search engine. So if an organization hesitates to adapt, they literally risk becoming entirely invisible to their buyers.
So to really wrap our heads around this, we're going to trace this whole ecosystem from the top down. We'll kick things off by looking at this staggering $300 billion global shift. And then we're going to zoom all the way down to the ground floor of a very specific multi-billion-dollar legal market. Doing this will show us exactly how regulatory pressures and massive leaps in tech actually upend business models in real time. It's absolutely fascinating.
But first things first, we have to talk about the catalyst driving the immediate public side of this massive shakeout. Enter the European Union's Digital Markets Act, or DMA. Regulators are aggressively forcing Google to open up its proprietary search data to third-party AI competitors. Just look at how fast this is moving. Back in September 2023, Google was officially designated a digital gatekeeper, meaning, they essentially control the main door to the internet, and they had to comply by March 2024. Fast forward a bit to April 2026, and regulators have issued their preliminary findings with a goal of hitting a binding final decision by July 2026. Make no mistake, regulators are moving at warp speed to make sure these digital gateways are forced open.
So what does this actually look like on the ground? Well, the European Commission has sent out these preliminary findings, basically demanding that Google share its ranking, query, click, and view data. And it has to be on fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory terms. The whole stated goal here is directly 100% tied to the AI boom. Regulators want to make absolutely sure that third-party online search engines, and yes, that specifically includes artificial intelligence chatbots with search features, actually have the raw data they need to optimize their own services. They're treating the search data like the critical fuel needed to power the entire next generation of AI. And this really hits the nail on the head when it comes to the geopolitical stakes we're dealing with. Regulators are stepping in and legally mandating that this data bottleneck be broken wide open, all to fuel AI innovation across the entire ecosystem. As Executive Vice President Henna Virkkunen pointed out, the European Commission's stance is that data access simply cannot be restricted in ways that harm competition. And that's absolutely crucial right now, because in these fast-moving digital markets, even the tiniest changes in data access can quickly snowball and have a massive impact on who wins and who loses. Now, watch how this exact same disruption mirrors itself in the legal world. It's like a parallel universe. We're shifting gears from the public internet into the highly secure, heavily guarded realm of corporate discovery. You see, just as AI is completely changing how we search the web, it's also entirely rewriting how legal teams navigate mountains of private corporate data. Because at the end of the day, in both of these arenas, the core challenge is exactly the same. How do you sift through unimaginably vast oceans of information to find the exact highly specific answers you actually need? To really grasp the stakes in this private sector, consider this. The global e-discovery market is projected to grow from just under $20 billion in 2025 to hit over $28 billion by 2030. That's a rock-solid growth rate of over 7% year over year. But here's the kicker. While the overall pie is undeniably getting bigger, AI is completely scrambling who actually gets a slice of it. The traditional tools and the human services that used to generate those billions, they're shifting dramatically. And this is the crucial point we need to zero in on. We are witnessing a massive structural shift away from human services and directly toward AI-driven software. We're expecting software's market share to jump a full 5 percentage points in just 5 years, moving from 34% of total e-discovery spend in 2025 up to 39% by 2030. Listen, this is not just a fluke. This is an AI-driven channel reallocation. The workflow that historically generated massive revenue by billing human hours is migrating straight into software subscriptions. We're paying for AI processing power instead of human time.
We can see this dynamic even more clearly when we zoom into specific tasks. Historically speaking, human document review completely dominated legal budgets. Back in 2012, review accounted for a staggering 73% of total task spend. But looking ahead to 2030, its share is projected to plummet to just 52%. Meanwhile, the whole process of just collecting the data is expanding, eating up about a quarter of the budget. So AI is stepping in, taking over the heavy lifting of the actual document review, and that's pushing the relative share of spending heavily toward the collection and processing phases.
Now, you might be wondering, if AI is so good, why isn't human review just disappearing entirely? Well, it's because the demand side is exploding with unprecedented data growth. Worldwide enterprise data is expanding exponentially, and it is on track to hit an unbelievable 243 zettabytes by 2030. To put that into perspective, that is a frankly incomprehensible amount of information. This massive data multiplier effectively forces organizations into a corner. Human reviewers literally cannot keep up with this kind of volume anymore, which forces a total structural redefinition of what document discovery actually means in practice. To truly understand why this transition is happening at such a breakneck speed, you just have to look at the traditional human economics. Based on recent pricing survey data, paying a human attorney to sit down and review a single document typically costs anywhere between 50 cents and $1. And honestly, this has been the reliable baseline standard for years. It set a really firm floor on what corporate legal departments just expected to pay whenever they needed large-scale document analysis.
But then, look what happens when we compare that old standard to the new generative AI reality. With these emerging AI-assisted review tools, the cost per document completely drops off a cliff. We're talking down to between 11 and 50 cents. So what happens when the traditional human price floor slams into this new AI ceiling? The economic case just becomes undeniable. The cost differential is so substantial, so massive, that it practically forces rapid, widespread adoption across the board. However, as with any massive shift, navigating this transition isn't quite as simple as just flipping a switch. Right now, the billing models for this new AI reality are completely fragmented. Providers are out there experimenting heavily to see what sticks. Roughly 28% are sticking with per document fees, while others are trying out per gigabyte ingestion fees, or even cooking up these totally custom, outcome-based agreements. In fact, nearly 80% of surveyed professionals admit they have zero experience with outcome-based AI pricing yet. So we have this wild scenario where the market is sort of stabilizing in traditional service categories while simultaneously severely fragmenting in these newer AI-driven ones. Okay, so here's what you really need to take away from this part. The true hidden costs today lie in what we call exception handling. Basically, what happens, and more importantly, who pays the bill when the AI inevitably fails to process a document correctly. The data shows nearly 40% of professionals simply have no idea how their contracts handle these failures. Some systems just automatically route exceptions to standard manual review, while others charge for it as additional AI processing time. If organizations aren't extremely careful here, the money they think they're saving on AI efficiency can instantly vanish into these undefined manual exception workflows. And this brings us to a really fascinating concept called Goodhart's Law. It's named after the economist Charles Goodhart, and the principle states, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. This perfectly, elegantly explains the absolute chaos that ensues when AI comes in and shatters traditional human business metrics. Think about it. When a company optimizes purely for an outdated revenue target, like billing for hours worked or the number of human documents read, instead of optimizing for the actual overall goal of the business, systemic issues are basically guaranteed to pop up. Because when you introduce lightning-fast AI into a system that was historically built to bill by the hour, those old revenue targets actually begin to deform. They can actually damage the business. It's a lot like gyroscopic precession in physics, right? If you push on a spinning rotor, the effect actually happens 90 degrees away from where you pushed. In the exact same way, the pressure applied to a business by AI often produces an effect somewhere entirely unexpected. If you keep pushing an outdated revenue metric, it can lead to some really bizarre outcomes.
like custom, off-segment works suddenly colonizing your entire product roadmap, all simply because the organization is blindly trying to feed a metric that just no longer aligns with an AI-driven reality.
So, where does this leave us? We are standing on the edge of a massive impending shakeout across all of our information systems. Whether we're talking about Google navigating the European Union's strict mandates to open up its search data, or massive law firms scrambling to figure out how to price generative AI workflows against their traditional human review models, the entire landscape of discovery is actively being rewritten. And it leaves us with this big question. As the dust finally settles on this $300 billion redistribution, who is going to adapt to this new AI-driven reality, and who is just going to be left behind in the dark? It really makes you wonder, how might your own metrics be quietly turning against you in the age of AI? Food for thought. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.